What's going on? Has someone been hurt?
What's all the shouting?
I still can't believe it.
I thought I heard Heber. He sounded hysterical.
It happened so fast. I was right over there.
Who's that on the ground?
It's Ezer. Look at that gash in the side of his head. What happened?
He's been killed. It was Caleb who killed him.
But
They
why?
were good friends.
Caleb wouldn't hurt anyone.
It was an accident. I saw the whole thing.
What do you mean, an accident?
What happened?
It was the axe head. It flew off the handle and hit Ezer right on the head.
Well, didn't he know the axe head was loose?
No, he couldn't have. It was Ezer's axe. He'd just given it to Caleb to use.
Well, then it really was an accident, wasn't it?
I came running as fast as I could. But Heber came running up too. And you know how hot-tempered Heber is. And he grabbed the axe handle out of Caleb's hand and he was going to kill him with it. He would have too if I hadn't got here as soon as I did.
Well, I can see why he'd go to pieces all right. What with Ezer's wife being his own sister and pregnant besides.
Anyway, I grabbed hold of Heber and I stopped him. Heber, I said it was an accident. Besides, you're not the avenger of blood. You're not the next of kin. If you kill Caleb, then you'll have the blood guilt on your own head. Ezer's brother Jared is the next of kin. He is the only one who has any right to the life of Caleb.
Well, what did he say to that?
Well, he just looked at me for a minute. And then he ran off. And I know just where he went. He went to get Jared.
Where's Caleb?
He didn't wait. As soon as he realized that Ezer was dead, he told me to tell his father that he was fleeing to the city of Refuge just as fast as he could get there. And he's headed for Hebron right now.
Ezer!
It's Jared.
Ezer! Where's Ezer, my brother?
What shall we tell him?
Is it true? Has Caleb killed my brother Ezer?
Here is your brother, Jared. But it was an accident. I saw the whole thing. Caleb didn't kill Ezer intentionally.
Ezer. Ezer, my brother. My only brother. He was so young. He had so much to live for. And his firstborn, not yet delivered. Caleb has done this thing to my brother. Where is Caleb?
He's fled to Hebron for refuge.
Please, Jared, have mercy. It was only an accident. Let him flee to the city of Refuge.
How long has he been gone?
All of a half hour, I'd say.
Did he have food or water?
He took nothing.
He'll be tired from this morning's work. And fresh. I'll catch him before nightfall and avenge my brother's death.
Please, Jared, have mercy, even as Jehovah does. Caleb loved Ezer, too. He wished him no harm. Don't spill innocent blood and bring blood guilt on us.
Why didn't you stop, Jared?
I tried. You saw me. But Jared's heart is hot. A life has gone out of Jared's family. In his eyes, at this moment, only the life of Caleb will atone for Ezer's life. Hebron is half a day's journey from us here in Enganim. And it's uphill all the way. Caleb has only a half-hour's start. But if he makes it, then he'll be safe from the Avenger of Blood.
Yes. And what a merciful provision Jehovah's made in the cities of refuge. If Caleb can only reach the city before Jared overtakes him, then he'll find a sanctuary. And Jehovah's provision to keep the land free of innocent blood will be carried out.
May Jehovah show him mercy.
What you have just seen may have happened many times over in ancient Israel, at least in substance. Of course, the people you've seen are not real characters in the Bible, nor are these events related there in detail. But Jehovah's laws involving blood guilt and the cities of refuge are clearly defined in his record, and an understanding of them today is vital if we are to discharge properly our own responsibilities to Jehovah. What was God's law on the cities of refuge? How did it affect the lives of his people who were involved in an accidental slaying? How does that law, in its prophetic application today, influence the entire pattern of our lives? These are questions that an overseer, earnest shepherd, is asking this family, Ben, Alita, and Shirley Detour, who were some time ago actively associated with his congregation. He's talking to them because he sincerely believes that in spite of their inactivity, they still love Jehovah. They watch now with keen interest, as do we, as the scene shifts to a courtyard just inside Hebron a few hours later.
I see a man running. He is alone and staggering. He looks faint. A refugee approaches.
Refuge! Refuge!
Father, Father, a refugee! He's faint! Hurry! Hurry!
He's been running hard, Ahimeth. He's hurt, too.
Abigail, the water, quickly.
You're very kind, my lord. May I find a sanctuary in this city of refuge?
You can, my brother, if you're a unwitting manslayer.
I am. It was an accident. The axe head. Oh, it must have been loose.
You're hurt, my son. Here, let me see your hand. Did this happen on the way or when the killing occurred?
I fell at a turn in the road. I knew that the Avenger would be close behind me. I didn't dare stop for a moment. Just after I passed through Bethzer, I came to a fork in the road, and I wasn't sure for a moment which way to go. There was no sign to mark the road. In my haste, I fell over some stones that were in the highway, and I cut my hand on a piece of jagged rock. It isn't serious.
Just this side of Beth Zur. That would be Joktan's section of the highway. Report this to Zerahiah at once. Joktan has been warned repeatedly that he must keep that fork clearly marked and the stones out of the highway. Zerahiah told him last time that he would give him only one more warning. The way to the city must be kept clear. Abigail, bring me the oil, please.
A stranger approaches carrying a weapon. The Avenger of Blood is coming.
Restrain him. See that he does no harm. A man's come here. He's taken the life of my brother. He must pay back that life with his own. I'm next of kin, the avenger of my brother's blood. I'm Jared of the city of En-Ganim in Judah. Jared, you must know that you're in Hebron. This is a city of refuge. You have no authority here to take this man's life. Calm your spirit until Zerahiah, the chief priest of the city, comes. Abigail, fetch Zerahiah quickly.
As you say, Father.
What's your name, my brother?
Caleb, my lord, son of Jechaliah of the tribe of Judah, also from the city of En-Ganim and the Shephelah of Judah. Jared, you know that I was no hater of Ezer formerly. I loved him as my own brother. It was an accident. I don't know how it could have happened, but so may Jehovah do to me, and so may he add to it if I'm guilty of your brother's blood.
Zerahiah, Caleb, the son of Jechaliah of Judah, has fled to Hebron from En-Ganim seeking refuge. He killed the brother of this man, Jared, who's come here as the avenger of blood, seeking Caleb's life.
Jared, Jehovah has provided refuge in this city. You must respect the sacred status of this place. As you know, Caleb must stand trial for the slaying of your brother, and he'll be returned to En-Ganim under the protective custody of this city to establish his innocence or his guilt. If it's proved in the eyes of the judges of his city that it was indeed unexpectedly, without enmity, that he killed your brother, then he'll be entitled to return to this city and remain here until the death of the high priest of Israel, and find sanctuary within the limits of these walls and the grazing grounds assigned to us that surround the city. You, as the avenger of blood, will have no right to take his life unless you find him outside these limits. If, on the other hand, it's found that he has lain in wait for your brother and has risen up against him to strike his soul fatally, then he will be delivered into your hand, and you, as the avenger of blood, must fall upon him and take his life in order that blood guilt might be cleared away from out of the land. Now, Caleb looks tired and filled with grief. He must be fed and rested before he returns to stand trial. Please, go your way in peace, Jared, my brother. Restrain your hand according to Jehovah's law. Do not bring further blood guilt upon the land, please, by killing this man before the assembly can judge between him and you. And may Jehovah be with you and comfort you for the loss of your brother, as we all grieve for you.
Just as you say, my lord, but I'll be watching.
Now, my son, you must eat, be refreshed. Ahimaaz, a Levite stationed here in the city, you'll find a resting place in his home overnight, and tomorrow you'll be returned to your city to stand trial.
May Jehovah's will be done, and may Jehovah's name be blessed for the mercy he's shown me this day. For indeed, my conscience is clean of the blood of my dear friend Ezer.
So be it. Ahimaaz, Caleb's in your hands. Deal kindly with him, please, until he can stand before the assembly of elders of Enganim.
Just as you've spoken, my lord. Abigail, run quickly and prepare food for our guest.
Right away, Father. May your heart be refreshed in our humble home, Caleb.
May Jehovah reward your kindness to me.
Shebekah, please see to Caleb's needs until I return. I must obtain a change of clothing for him from our storehouse.
As it pleases you, my lord. May Jehovah bless your days in our city, Master Caleb.
My very life is in his hands. The priest said your name was
Shebekah, my master.
Shebekah. That has the sound of an Ethiopian name. You have the appearance of a man from Ethiopia. But tell me, please, what are you doing here in Hebron?
I am an Ethiopian by birth, but I'm a circumcised proselyte seeking refuge the same as you. I was a temporary resident in Jerusalem, a merchant, dealing in costly cloth and jewelry from Ethiopia and Egypt. But one day, about 5 years ago, as I was in the marketplace with my wares, a good-for-nothing loafer seized a bag of my finest pearls behind my back and started to run with them. I turned just in time to see it and lunged to grab him. He dodged, stumbled over a jar of olive oil, and fell, striking his head on the stone bench. He died instantly.
Truly, the one chasing after what is bad is in line for his own death. But did he have an avenger who sought your life?
His brother. But his brother's as worthless as he was. At first, he tried to obtain a ransom for my soul. But when I refused, then he tried to kill me. Just the same, the elders decided that I must flee here, because the law says that a thief who is found in the act when the sun is shining forth upon him, and who gets struck and who dies, there is blood guilt for him.
Have you found happiness here?
More than I have ever known. Didn't your King David write in the Psalms, "Happy is the one whose transgression is pardoned, whose sin is covered. Happy is the man to whose account Jehovah does not put error." Why, in the land of my birth, if a stranger were to kill an Ethiopian, even by accident, he'd pay for it with his life. And once, while traveling in Egypt, I saw a stranger unintentionally kill a cat. Just a cat, mind you. But cats are thought to be gods in Egypt, and the man was torn to pieces by the hysterical mob. Jehovah's law doesn't allow that in Israel. Not even to someone like me.
No. Jehovah has told us, that the temporary resident who resides for a while with you should become to you like a native of yours, and you must love him as yourself. But what do you do here, Shebekah?
I've learned a new trade. No one is allowed to become a burden on the city. Not that I have need of means to sustain me here. None of my goods were lost to me, and I can continue as a merchant even here. But I've come to know, Caleb, that there's nothing better than to rejoice and to do good during one's life. I've become a maker of very fine rope, and you'll see my rope all over the city. Now I can contribute something in return for the blessings I've received. You'll be given work too.
How can you be so sure I'll be coming back?
Because you're innocent.
How can you know that? You have only my word.
But your word is that of an honest man. Remember, I'm a merchant. I've observed many men. A merchant learns to know men by necessity. You're not a malicious man or a murderer.
Are the rest of the refugees here honest men too?
Most of them, yes. You have honorable judges in Israel, men who can determine the guilt or innocence of a man, and who are above bribes. But there are a few of the refugees here in Hebron. Well...
And what would an Ethiopian merchant know of honesty, Shebekah?
Shebekah tells me he's a circumcised proselyte.
Oh, so he says. Are you a new refugee or a visiting friend of our merchant here?
I'm Caleb, son of Jechaliah of Enganim, seeking refuge in Hebron.
Well, Caleb, son of Jechaliah, I hope you're able to find some peace here in this place.
Now, Johanan, your sour disposition will discourage our new friend before he even gets settled. You see, Caleb, Johanan seems to think he's the only one here with a family back
home. You have a family, Caleb?
Only an aging father.
No brothers, sisters, wife?
No one but my father.
Then you'll have no sympathy for those of us who must count the days.
Johanan, you make my soul impatient to the point of dying. He fills his belly with the wind and croaks like a frog. But will he listen when I try to show him a way out? I could show you a thing or two.
Reuben, Eliab was looking for you and Johanan in the fields outside the gate.
Oh? Should I have reported to him? I haven't been feeling well. You know how my back has been troubling me. Oh, my back. I don't know what Johanan's problem is. Just homesick, I guess.
Come, Caleb. Let's get you a good bath and a change of clothes. I'm sure Abigail will have something ready for you to eat by now.
I'm in your hands, Ahimath. Shebekah, may Jehovah return to you the good you've done for me. You've indeed lifted my spirits. If Jehovah's merciful to me and allows me sanctuary here, I pray that I'll find the happiness that you found, and that my faith will sustain me as yours has.
May Jehovah be with you until we meet again, Caleb.
My brother Shepherd, do you mean that Caleb couldn't leave the city of refuge until the high priest died?
That's right, Shirley.
But that could be just ages.
Yes, it could be a long time, and sometimes it probably was.
But why did they have cities of refuge, Ernest? If Caleb was innocent, why couldn't he just go free?
It was a picture for us today, wasn't it, Ernest?
Yes, it does serve that way, Ben. But, Alida, the loss of a life couldn't be excused that easily. You see, in those days, the next of kin to a slain man automatically became the executioner of his slayer, like Jared was, and his right was respected, except
But why? If Caleb was innocent?
Well, even today we say that a man's life is lost, don't we? Or if he's murdered, that his life was taken.
Oh, I see. So that's why Jared was so anxious to take Caleb's life. It wasn't just because he was angry.
Yes. You see, some of the people who were not Israelites argued that a man who took a life actually received it and the benefits of it. So it would only be fitting that the nearest relative be authorized to take it back. And the only way this could be done was to take the life of the man who'd taken it.
Oh, so if Caleb hadn't escaped from Jared, then Jared really would be justified in killing him.
Yes, in a way.
But he was innocent. isn't.
Well, that's just it. Now, let's just suppose for a moment that Caleb and Jared were not Israelites, but were like those of the other nations at that time. Jared would likely have found Caleb and killed him, not caring whether Caleb's had been an accidental killing or not. Of course, if it had been, like it was in Caleb's case, then innocent blood would be shed in executing him. But in any event, Caleb's next of kin would as likely as not go out after Jared and so on, and a blood feud would have bathed the land in blood.
But Jehovah wouldn't allow this in Israel.
Exactly. His provision of cities as a sanctuary or a place of refuge for the unintentional slayer eliminated all that.
But they did put murders to death, didn't they?
That's right.
My, that is a wonderful provision, isn't it? And so simple.
Well, was Hebron the only city of refuge, Brother Shepherd?
No, it wasn't. You see, Hebron was 19 miles south of Jerusalem, so those up around the Sea of Galilee would have had too far to flee.
Well, how many were there then?
6 altogether, 3 on each side of the Jordan River.
Oh. Daddy, you said a minute ago that this was a picture for us today. Well, what does the City of Refuge picture?
The New World Society, I guess, doesn't it, Ernest?
No, not really. It wasn't the city that saved Caleb, was it?
No, I guess not. Otherwise, he could have gone to just any city.
That's right. It was Jehovah's provision of the city that saved Caleb. And so it is with us. An organization by itself doesn't save us, but Jehovah's provision does. His provision for protection from blood guilt through Jesus' ransom sacrifice and Christ's services as Jehovah's great high priest.
Then how do we flee there?
Why, by our dedication and baptism, isn't it, Ernest?
Yes. And through the administration of the great high priest and the services performed by his organization, we get a bath and clean clothes.
And we get our wounds healed too, don't we? Just like Caleb did.
Yes, we do. But remember, everyone in the city had to work, and the way to the city had to be clearly marked and the stones cleared out. What do you suppose that pictures?
I'm afraid I know what the answer to that is. Yes, that's the preaching work. I'm afraid we've been out of touch with things for quite a while, Ernest. But you know, we've had quite a few problems to work out, and it's kept us, tied down. But we haven't lost our love for Jehovah and his organization.
Well, now, Ben, I'm sure you haven't, and that's why I'm here. I know how things have been with you and Sister Detour. But don't you imagine that Caleb had some pretty important matters to attend to when this accident occurred?
Oh, I suppose so.
Yet he didn't dare wait a moment after Ezer died, did he?
No, guess not.
And you know, Ben, we're all in that same position that Caleb was.
We are. Me too.
All of us, Shirley. And we must all flee for our lives.
But we never killed anybody. Did we, Daddy?
I think Brother Shepherd's referring to the blood guilt we were under because of our past associations with the world. Isn't that right, Ernest?
Yes, that's right. Just take the matter of blood guilt and wars. Especially since 1914, the wars that nations have waged are total wars, because the whole nation was mobilized, and all citizens were made to contribute their part to the national effort. So all peoples must share in a community responsibility for the blood that's drenched the earth. And that's just one way that people of the nations are involved.
But aren't we cleansed of that blood guilt when we dedicate our lives to Jehovah and are baptized?
Yes, we are, Ben. But you remember, Caleb was told he must stay within the limits of that city, or risk being overtaken by the Avenger of Blood.
You mean to tell me we're not in that city anymore, just because we haven't been to meetings or gone out in service for some time?
Well, Brother Detour, maybe a little further look at some of the problems Caleb encountered will help us to answer that question.
My, though, I think it would have been easy for Caleb to stay in the city. What with it meaning his life and all.
You think so, Shirley? Let's see.
May Jehovah bless and prosper your day, Caleb.
He has, Ahimath, as he's blessed all my days in this city.
You've found peace here, haven't you?
All these 5 years that I've dwelt here to now, I've had little time to think about myself, except how much I appreciate Jehovah's mercy in allowing me this sanctuary. I'm concerned, though, for Esau's widow, but you fill my days with rewarding work.
Your knowledge of husbandry has been to our advantage. Never has our olive oil and our wine been so well cared for.
My father Jechaliah was known throughout all the valleys of Sorek and Elah for his fine wine and olive oil. I've learned the art from him. Seeing to its storage and distribution here is simply added to my pleasure.
Do you still miss your father?
Yes,
though I'd become reconciled somewhat. As you know, I was the son of his old age, his only son. My mother died giving me birth, so my father and I were as one in everything. It grieved me greatly when he died 2 years ago, and I was unable to see to his burial. But Jehovah's favored me with many fine friends here, especially you and Shebekah. Of course, Abigail has really been my delight.
Abigail will make you a faithful wife, Caleb. She'd be willing to marry you right now, and you have my consent.
I know, Ahimath. You've truly exercised loving kindness and trustworthiness toward me. But I couldn't make her a home here. When I'm freed of my debt and can return to the land of my possession, then I'll make her a home in the house of my father in Engannon.
So be it.
Greetings, Caleb. Are you leaving us some more of your fine olive oil?
Yes, Shebekah. It pleases me to see the flask full and running over. Can I forget how soothing it was when I came to Hebron seeking refuge, and Ahimath anointed my bruised hand with it? Do you remember?
I do indeed. Each day that someone's come here seeking refuge is clearly impressed on my mind and heart. And each time I've thanked Jehovah again for the mercy he's shown me in allowing me, an alien, to find sanctuary here. Never will I cease to marvel at Jehovah's long-suffering.
What will you do when you're free to leave the city, Shebekah?
Well, if Jehovah's willing and priest Zerahiah permits it, I think I'll stay on in Hebron and take up my old trade again as a merchant. I've really come to love this place, Caleb, and maybe I can help some of the new refugees who flee here.
Jehovah has blessed you with a strong faith, Shebekah.
That's easy for you to say, Caleb, and for you to have faith, Shebekah. Neither of you has a family like I do.
But there are many others here who do, Johanan, and they accept Jehovah's provision for them gratefully, as do their families, for they know they'll be reunited someday.
You know, Johanan, that Caleb has come into his inheritance and is much concerned about getting it in order, yet he maintains his spirit. Besides, there are many families in Israel that are voluntarily separated because they've grown poor and have need to sell themselves into voluntary servitude.
Shebekah, you are in Jerusalem. You know the high priest. He is getting quite old, isn't he? Do you think he has long to, is it well with him?
He's old and full of years. He never comes to Hebron anymore.
Caleb, what do you think? Do you think that soon he'll, do you think we'll have to stay in this city of refuge much longer?
Are you trying to ask whether we think the high priest will soon end his days?
Oh, no.
I never allow myself to consider that circumstance. When I think of the services he performs for us and how he stands before the altar of Jehovah for us, really, if it weren't for his services, we would be like a nation without God, without hope. I'm young in days, Johanan, and you're aged. But it's the spirit in mortal man and the breath of the Almighty that gives them understanding. Put away these thoughts against Shephatiah the high priest. Heed the counsel of Ahimath and Zerahiah, both of whom have warned you of what such wrong thinking can lead to.
I wish him no harm. I wish him no harm. He's holy to Jehovah. But as you say, Caleb, I'm aging too, and the work is difficult for me here. Why, back at my home...
Johanan, you're like a round cake baked on one side. Your complaints are like the drippings of a nagging wife. Why don't you just leave the city?
Why, I can't do that. My avenger...
Your avenger? How do you know he hasn't forgotten you? I know mine has.
Now, Reuben, don't add to Johanan's burden by taunting him. You'll only undermine the little faith he does have. Besides, how can you be so sure your avenger of blood has forgotten you?
Never mind. I have ways of knowing things. How do you know I haven't already put him to the test?
But suppose he has forgotten you, Reuben. Jehovah's law concerning the city of refuge must not be violated in any event. Zerahiah has spoken of these things many times.
Zerahiah is old. He interprets the law too strictly.
Then think of David's words, Reuben. From presumptuous acts hold your servant back. Do not let them dominate me. In that case I shall be complete, and I shall have remained innocent from much transgression.
Ah, Psalms.
I see a man running as one bearing tidings. A messenger approaches.
I am Meshach. I have come from Anganon with a message for my master Caleb, who is here in Hebron.
Meshach, how good to see you. Is all well at home?
It is well, my master. I have a letter for you from Zobab.
Good. Rest yourself, Meshach, and I'll see to some refreshment for you in a moment.
Let me see to it, Caleb. You'll want to talk over your news with Abigail, no doubt. You're very thoughtful, my brother.
Abigail, my dear, after you've spoken to Caleb, will you go into the field, please, and tell Eliab that I'd like to see him when he comes in for the noon meal?
As you wish, Father. You look troubled, Caleb. Is it bad news?
No, not really. My mind's troubled because the news from home isn't clear. There are a number of matters that I'd like to set straight.
Doesn't Zobab report regularly?
Yes. I received another letter just before the new moon. But his letters speak only of the most ordinary happenings. I sense that something isn't right.
You mean you don't trust Zobab?
On the contrary. He's a most devoted slave. You know that even before I came to Hebron, he renounced his right to freedom and voluntarily had his ear bored through with an awl to the door.
Oh, he didn't want to go out free in his 7th year. He desired to be your father's slave indefinitely.
Yes, now he's as devoted to me as he was to my father. I'm sure of that. But I'm not sure of Jedediah.
Isn't he the distant cousin who came to stay with your father after you fled here to Hebron?
Yes, he's the stepson of my mother's half-sister. He's related only by marriage. Since my father's death, he's continued to accept the hospitality of my house, to which he's welcome. But I know nothing of his activity there or how he views our relationship. In my last letter to Zobab, I inquired as to the provision being made for him and asked some pointed questions.
What does Zobab say?
That's why I'm troubled. He says practically nothing. Oh, he assures me that all is well, but he leaves my questions almost completely unanswered. And that isn't like Zobab. He's always been so open and straightforward.
Perhaps your fears are groundless, Caleb. Perhaps you feel only the restraint of this city. I know how you long to get back home so that you can care for your inheritance yourself. I long for that day, too, so that I can be with you always. But it makes my heart heavy to see you unhappy.
There now, my little dove. I don't want you to be weighed down because of me. Perhaps Meshach can shed some light on this matter. He's just come from home. I'll go question him.
May Jehovah reward your efforts, Caleb.
Caleb, Johanan's just told me something that's very disquieting.
Not bad news from your family,
Not
Johanan.
his own, Caleb, from yours.
Mine? But my slave Meshach was just here.
Now, Shebeka, Reuben didn't say anything definite. You know how he talks, and I wouldn't want to get Caleb all excited for nothing.
What is it, Johanan? What did Reuben say?
Oh, he was poking fun at me again about how I miss my family. He was asking me sarcastically how long it's been since they were here to see me. But you know, Caleb, that I'm a very poor man. It's been very hard on me since I've been here. My wife has a great load of responsibility on her in caring for our little place and raising 2 boys. There's some help to her now, but it's expensive for them to travel all the way here from Aslan. You know that's on the extreme southern border of Judah.
I know, Johanan. I'm very sorry they can't see you oftener. But what did Reuben say about my home?
Go on, Johanan. Tell him what you told me.
Well, all he really said was that, you know what he said a little while ago about how strict Zerahiah is in keeping the law.
Yes, I know. Go on.
Well, he started that all over again, and then he said he saw no reason why he should stay cooped up here in the city all of the time, and even hinted he'd already been out a time or 2. And when I began to remind him of what you've said, he blurted out of you. He meant you, Caleb. If you knew what was good for you, you wouldn't act so righteous about observing the law of this city either.
What did he mean by that?
That's what I asked him, and he said if you knew what he knows, you wouldn't hesitate about breaking the law and getting out of the city for a while either.
What else did he say?
That's all. I asked him what he was a-talking about, but he shut up as though he'd set a muzzle on his mouth.
What do you make of it all, Shebeka?
I don't know. Reuben's mouth is usually let loose to what is bad, but even a lying tongue seeks something to gain by it. How could such a bad report help Reuben?
Other than to justify his own bad conscience, maybe.
But why would that make him seem to regret his loose tongue afterwards?
Reuben, come here, please.
What for? You have another psalm you want to read to me?
No, Johanan's told me something that makes me think you might have something to say to me.
I have nothing to say to you, Caleb. Johanan talks too much. Maybe he was mooning over his family and dreamed it.
Reuben, if you know something about my affairs back home that I should know, please tell me.
Ah, what for? What can you do about it? Would you run right down to Enganim and straighten the whole matter out?
Straighten out what?
Ah, nothing. You're all making me impatient to the point of dying. Look at Johanan there, moaning around all the time. You big mouth. You talk about your family, and you complain about the work you never do. They can't afford to come up here. But you wouldn't think of going down there to see them.
You know I can't do that, Reuben. It's against Jehovah's law to leave the city.
Against the law, ha? Besides, how do you know what's happening in that forsaken little village of Asmon? How do you know how many suitors your wife has with you away so long?
You lie.
As I live, Reuben, you've gone too far. If you have anything to say, speak up, or may Jehovah judge between me and you.
Yes, let Jehovah be the judge, and let him save your worthless inheritance for you. Let him stop that good-for-nothing cousin of yours, and your precious slave, Zobab, too, from stealing you blind. Yes, stealing you blind. Let him, you fool. Ah, I've got to go out in the field and do some chores.
Reuben, if you have any love for what's good left in you, you'll not go beyond the limits of this place.
Ah!
Shebeka, I must go to Enganim at once. I knew something was wrong.
But you can't leave Hebron, Caleb. You know that.
I must. I have no choice now. Reuben wasn't lying this time. He knows something he won't tell.
Oh, if only the high priest were dead.
But Reuben was lying about Johanan's wife, you know that.
Yes, I know he was, but
I'm sure he must have been exaggerating.
I know how to find out. Meshach, my slave from home, is still here. I'm going to speak to him anyway. Let's go, Shebeka.
Meshach has gone back home, Caleb.
Gone? But why?
He paused for only a hasty snack, then left by another gate. He said Zobab had urgent work for him. He wanted to get back before the Sabbath.
Shebeka, I'm sure now that Zobab is keeping something from me. That letter he sent was just too...
Caleb! I saw Reuben going off somewhere. He was already beyond the limits of Hebron, and his face was white as death. Caleb, what's wrong? What's the matter?
I must go to Enganim, Abigail, at once.
But Caleb, you can't. What about Jared? He'll kill you.
I have no choice.
But what's happened? Has Reuben...
I've just learned that Jedediah is ruining my inheritance.
Oh, no.
Maybe even Zobab's involved. I don't know.
Oh, no.
But I've got to find out.
Oh, how awful. But please don't go, Caleb. Even your inheritance isn't worth your life.
You must reconsider, Caleb. You know that Jared hasn't forgotten what happened to Ezer. You know he's sworn that if you leave the city of Refuge, you'll not see nightfall. Trust in Jehovah, Caleb. He can solve this problem for you.
But I do have faith in Jehovah. I do trust in him. He can deliver me from the hand of the avenger, too. Don't you see? My inheritance is from Jehovah. It's a trust that's been in my family since the land of promise was divided in the days of Joshua. I can't betray that trust. I must save this inheritance for my son, even at the risk of my life.
Save it for your son. If you die, you'll have no son.
I have no choice. May Jehovah's will be done.
Oh, Brother Shepherd, Caleb isn't really going to leave, is he? Can we help him?
It's a decision he has to make,
How
Shirley.
can we help him, Shirley? We can't even help ourselves.
None of us can survive alone, Ben.
Well, I can sympathize with him. It's like he and I have a lot in common. You know, I don't like to miss meetings.
I can feel myself slipping. I really do.
Me too.
But I do have my family to take care of, and what with just getting my new business started, well, it's taking a lot more time than I'd figured. I think I know just how Caleb must feel.
I can't get over that awful thing that Johanan said.
What was that, Mom?
That he wished the high priest were dead. What a cruel thing to say.
How could he wish something like that, just so he wouldn't have to stay in the city any longer?
That's what happens when people think only of themselves. Haven't you ever heard anyone say they wish Armageddon would hurry up and come? When they say it that way, usually it's only so they won't have any more preaching to do.
And I've said that myself, Ernest.
But then, well, think of all the people that we haven't even preached to yet.
That's just it, Shirley. If we were thinking of them and how God's mercy is still extended to them, we'd be so anxious to help them get to the city of refuge, we wouldn't have time to think of ourselves.
But, you know, Brother Shepherd, I'm not sure whether I ever got to the city of refuge yet. I've, never been baptized, you know.
I know, Shirley. But you began to publish with your parents when they were baptized. Have you ever thought about being baptized?
Yes, but suppose I did, and then something happened and I didn't make it.
Like what?
Well, you know Susie Shirker was disfellowshipped for immorality. Now, if she hadn't been baptized, she wouldn't have had to be disfellowshipped.
Shirley Detoured, what a thing
If
to say.
I thought you really meant that, I'd give you the paddling of your life, big as you are. You sound the way Reuben talked.
You don't really think that after you're baptized, you're going to be like the people of the world who have no restraint, who have no help from God.
Well, no, but...
Because if you do, you don't understand the saving power of baptism and its relation to the Christian conscience.
I don't understand. What do you mean?
The baptismal arrangement cuts us off from this doomed world. It gives us an awareness of being made right with God, of having a standing with Him that will allow us to continue in a saved condition. Here, read 1 Peter 3:20 and 21.
That which corresponds to this. To what, Ernest?
To the flood of Noah's day.
Oh, that which corresponds to this is also now saving you, namely baptism, not the putting away of the filth of the flesh, but the request made to God for a good conscience through the resurrection of Jesus Christ.
Thank you, Alida. Now, Shirley, what do we mean by conscience?
Well, let's see. I guess our conscience tells us, whether something's right or wrong, doesn't it?
Yes, it does. It should anyway. But the good conscience Peter speaks of is really far more than that. The conscience that we request from God by complying with His baptismal arrangement is a conscience that is freed of any guilt toward God. It's an awareness of the provision of Jesus' ransom sacrifice that cleanses us of all sin, not like the animal sacrifices that had to be repeated every year. No, this good conscience that God gives us allows us to come into a clean relationship with Jehovah and stay that way by availing ourselves of the services of His great high priest. That is, it will if we work to maintain that good conscience.
Then that's what I need, isn't it? A good conscience. Do you think I have a bad conscience, Brother Shepherd?
We all had a bad conscience toward God at one time, Shirley. But when we come into the antitypical city of refuge through dedication and baptism, we leave behind all sense of guilt, and we should continue on in the city with that same freedom. In fact, if we begin to harden our conscience against God and justify ourselves for drifting away from His provision, we're putting ourselves in the dangerous position of eventually leaving the city altogether.
Like Reuben, huh?
That's right, Shirley. And to stay in that city, we must, on our part, maintain our faith and appreciation in what God has provided for us. We must keep our eyes on the ransom and walk in harmony with the Spirit's direction to make straight paths for our feet. That's what a good conscience will prod us to do.
Now, how can Caleb do that, Ernest? How can Caleb keep a clean conscience toward God's provision of the city of refuge and yet care for his inheritance? I'd sure like to know how I can do it. We both need some real help from someplace.
But do you think Caleb will really leave the city, Brother Shepherd?
Do you think we ought to find out?
Yes, let's do.
Caleb, my son, I'm grieved to learn that you've received bad news from home.
How did you know? Did Reuben speak to you too? I've just this minute learned of it.
No, not Reuben. Abigail's informed me. She's concerned about you. She fears for your life. You know that Jared, Ezer's avenger of blood, still seeks your life. He'll be more alert than ever now, knowing that you might try to return home out of concern for this trouble that's developed. And I'm sure he'll not stand by idly if you violate Jehovah's provision of mercy and leave this city before the death of the high priest.
Excuse me, my lord. I know that my life's in danger, but I also value the inheritance that Jehovah's given my family. I feel that it's a trust that is mine, one that I must guard with my life if necessary.
Is that Jehovah's reasoning on the matter, Caleb, or your own? You know that if it were not for the mercy of Jehovah, you wouldn't be alive today, and you'd have had no opportunity to have an inheritance or to defend it. But Jehovah's given you your life by providing you a sanctuary here in this city of refuge. There are few in this city who do not appreciate the mercy of God. Reuben's one of such. He toys with his life. To him, it's a game that he's playing. Even now he's left the city. I know this. It's his own choice, one that he was free to make. But in leaving as he has, he's violating God's law in the cities of refuge and showing a complete lack of concern for his own life and for the life which he took. For this, he deserves to die. How long do you think any man can ignore the will of God and his provision with impunity? Johanan, you too have developed a very bad spirit here in this city.
Me, my lord?
Yes, you, Johanan. I know how you've talked on many occasions. I know, too, how you chafe at your need to stay on in Hebron, even though it's a sanctuary for you. You'd like to have all the benefits of this city of refuge without any cost or inconvenience to you whatsoever. I know how you've even hinted many times that you can't wait until the high priest is dead so that you can leave. Ahimath and others of the priests have spoken to you about this frequently, and I've warned you myself that as in the case of Cain, sin is crouching at the entrance, and its longing is for you, and you ought to get the mastery over it. Now, in the presence of these witnesses, I warn you for the last time. Otherwise, you'll force us, as elders of this city, to lay a formal charge against you of speaking abusively of a chieftain in Israel, one upon whose head the anointing oil has been poured. For the law says, you must not call down evil upon God, nor curse a chieftain among your people. And as for our responsibility in this matter, the law says, in case a soul should sin, in that he has heard public cursing, if he should not report it, then he must answer for his iniquity. So you'll force us to take action against you if you don't stop thinking just of yourself. Think of the life you've taken. Innocently, it's true. But nevertheless, a man is dead because of you. A man who will not return to his family when the high priest dies. Think of them, Johanan, and thank Jehovah every day for the mercy he's shown you, and rejoice in the work he's given you to do in this place, so that you can show your appreciation to him by your own good works.
My lord, I didn't realize how greatly I've sinned. I was thinking only of myself, not even of my own family. I was so concerned for myself that I lost my love for Jehovah and appreciation for his mercy. Do you think he'll forgive me?
You have need to ask for forgiveness, Johanan. Not only have you hated your brother in your heart by wishing the death of Shephatiah, but also you have denied the mercy of God. If you're to be forgiven, you must carry your petition to Jehovah himself.
I will, my lord, I will.
And now, Caleb, my son, what can I say to you? You filled your days in Hebron with many blessings. You have here many friends whose hearts are as one with yours, your brothers, who are deeply concerned for your welfare. You've earned their love by giving so much of yourself. Your patience, your zealous work, these things have not gone unnoticed. Then, your devotion to Abigail, too, and your concern for her future, we commend this. Why now would you risk the loss of all this in the rash decision you've made?
Excuse me yet again, my lord, but what can I do? I know that it's wrong for me to consider leaving, but tell me, please, should I just ignore my responsibility in Ganem? I've tried by correspondence to correct the situation back home, but I couldn't even discover what was wrong. I know of nothing else but to go in person.
There is much that you can do, Caleb, but you failed in the very first of these. Why didn't you put your trust in Jehovah in this matter, as you have in other things?
But if it pleased my lord, I thought I was.
Are you doing that by violating his law? By tempting him to save you from the avenger of blood? What did wise King Solomon say, my son? Trust in Jehovah with all your heart, and do not lean upon your own understanding. In all your ways take notice of him, and he himself will make your paths straight. Why didn't you come to me and discuss this matter with me? I'm here by appointment from Jehovah, and it's my responsibility to see that the refugees in the city are cared for.
But you have so much to do anyway in caring for the city. Why should I trouble you with my problems?
But my duty as a priest of the Most High God is to instruct the people in the law and to help them to keep that law in happiness. I've seen these problems come up many times, and I've seen the hand of Jehovah working in behalf of those who trust in him. Do you think that you're any further from him than others have been? Do you think that the true God, who destroyed the world empire of Egypt to deliver our forefathers, and who parted the Red Sea to give them safe passage, cannot help you now, Caleb?
I have sinned, my lord. But have I the right to expect Jehovah to work for me in this way? Who am I that he should consider my distress and give me such special consideration while I'm in this place, indebted to him already for my life?
Has not your life always belonged to him? And did you not say that your inheritance is a gift from him? Imitate the faith of David, my son. Remember his petition to Jehovah. Let all my bones themselves say, O Jehovah, who is there like you, delivering the afflicted one from one stronger than he is, and the afflicted and poor one from the one robbing him? And in another of his prayers for help, when he happened to be in the cave, do pay attention to my entreating cry, for I become very much impoverished. Deliver me from my persecutors, for they are stronger than I am. Do bring my soul out of the very dungeon to laud your name. Around me let the righteous ones get, because you deal appropriately with me. Help will come to you, Caleb, because you're surrounded by your righteous brothers. Trust us. Give us a chance to help you. Don't separate yourself from Jehovah's provision for you.
I've sinned seriously, my lord Zerahiah. I see now that to leave this city even for a short time and for any reason at all would be not only to endanger my life, but to reproach Jehovah and to disown his mercy to me, mercy which has given me back my life. Your wise counsel has helped me to realize that Jehovah will show me the right way to solve my problem if I trust in him. May Jehovah forgive me for my short-sightedness.
May Jehovah bless you indeed, Caleb. His solution may not be the one that you would endeavor to work out, But his way is certain to be for your best interests.
Oh, the kindness of Jehovah.
May Jehovah be praised for revealing himself to you so plainly, Caleb.
Your faith and your love for Jehovah would never have allowed you to leave, Caleb.
Oh, Caleb, I never doubted for a moment what your final decision would be.
Look, who's that there?
It looks like Reuben.
It is Reuben.
Zeruiah, my lord.
Listen.
Even as you know, Reuben left the city of Refuge earlier today. We know now that he's done this before many times. His avenger of blood learned of it and felt impelled to come to him. Reuben was overtaken a half-hour's distance out of the city as he was returning, and he was killed. His body was turned over to us with this news as we came by the place.
I'm not surprised at Reuben's action.
I knew the Avenger of Blood in this case quite well. He's been in Hebron several times on business. He had no malice toward Reuben, but he was a man who loved what was good and hated what was bad. And he respected Jehovah's law. He was just and right in executing Reuben. Can we pity Reuben? Many words of counsel did I speak to him in an effort to help him to realize the seriousness of violating a provision of Jehovah. His own lack of regard has cost him his life. He's a willful violator of Jehovah's provision of mercy and his law in the cities of refuge. He's not worthy of an honorable burial. Take him outside the city and dispose of his corpse.
I had no love for
Reuben had no love for anyone. Jehovah has Jehovah.
Indeed shown me mercy again this day. Had it not been for you and your wise counsel, Zeruiah, I might well have been in the place of Reuben. But now Jehovah has shown me mercy and has spared my life a second time. I pray that I may always be worthy of it and never tempt Jehovah again.
Zeruiah, my lord, a newsbearer comes.
Welcome him.
Caleb, my master, are you well? I'm well, Zobab. Do you bring me news from home?
Forgive me, my lord Caleb, but your faithful slave does bring tidings. For months I've longed to write you and tell you of your bad state of affairs back home. I dared not, though, for fear of alarming you and causing you great sorrow and concern. Now I have the news.
Yes, go on, Zobab.
Since I've given my life to your father and now to you in your service, I couldn't stand idly by and see Jedediah misuse the trust that your father had placed in him. For some months now I've been suspicious that he was stealing from goods that your father had entrusted to him.
So that's what it's been.
Last week I became certain of his guilt when a faithful slave assigned to work with him disappeared and was later found dead.
Dead?
Oh, my. Who? It was Carmine. I reported Jedediah to the city elders. I gave them the facts that I had and all the evidence that I could muster. And when they investigated, they found that truly Jedediah was a thief and a murderer, and he's been stoned to death.
Oh,
May Jehovah be praised. Now I can truly say with King David, throw your burden upon Jehovah himself, and he himself will sustain you. Never will he allow the righteous one to totter.
Oh, Caleb, I'm so happy. Jehovah has opened the windows of heaven on you this day.
He has indeed poured me out a blessing that I cannot contain. And one of my richest blessings is to be found in you, Zobab, my faithful servant. From now on, you will be my eyes and my ears and my right arm. All that I have is in your care. Administer my affairs wisely, and may Jehovah continue to shower his favor upon you.
What a devoted act.
You certainly have been a true slave.
Oh, Brother Shepherd, I'm just thrilled about Caleb and Abigail. I could just run right out there and hug them.
Well, Shirley, someday people just like these, all of them, will be back in the resurrection, and you'll have that opportunity. The important thing is, what will you be able to do then to help them? Are you really equipping yourself now to do that?
Well, Ernest, I know that I, for one, wouldn't have to answer that question right now. I feel like I'm not doing anything. Caleb's problem was solved all right. But do you think Jehovah will really do the same thing for us today?
You never know what Jehovah is doing or will do for you, Ben, unless you give him the chance. If you try to work things out your own way, he'll let you. But if you try to follow his direction, then he'll show you how to solve your problems.
Well, I haven't seen any signs yet.
Now, don't misunderstand me. We have to try, and we have to keep trying. But if one effort isn't blessed, then we try something else. But how can we know what Jehovah's will for us is if we separate ourselves voluntarily from his arrangement of things? That's the surest way to lose out.
How about John and Betty Eager? They had to drop out of the pioneer work. Is that because they didn't rely enough on Jehovah?
That isn't for me to say, Alita. But remember, we didn't dedicate ourselves to a work, to the pioneer work or any other. We dedicated ourselves to Jehovah. He can use us in many ways, and he will, according to our abilities and circumstances, if we rely upon him. But you know, there's one thing about John and Betty. They never miss a meeting, and they're always well above the congregation average in service activity.
That's good, isn't it?
That's more than we've done.
As a matter of fact, Ben, I wanted to talk to you about John and Betty.
Oh?
They're now in a position to get back into the pioneer work again. All they need is to get the right kind of work. What they'd like to do is get a job they could share, alternating with each other. In this way, one of them could be out in the field service while the other's working.
Say, I think I know what you're going to say, and you know, it sounds good to me already.
I hope so. But understand, it's your business, and I'm not trying to interfere or make you feel obligated in any way. You're not.
I know that, Ernest, but, you know, I like John and Betty very much, and I know I can trust them. They're good workers, too. Now, if they were to work for me in my new business, you know, I'm sure we could make up a schedule that would allow all of us to get to the meetings.
That would be fine, Ben. I certainly hope it'll work out for you.
I certainly do too, Ernest. You can't know how much we appreciate your interest in helping us this way. It would seem to me that nobody would care. We've been gone so long.
You know, Ernest, we've been meaning to start attending meetings again, but I had no idea what a dangerous position we're in.
Hey, what's that? Is something happening back in Hebron, Brother Shepherd?
Well, let's see.
Fellow priests and residents of Hebron, my brothers, I have received news from Jerusalem. Shephatiah, the high priest of Israel, is dead.
The priest is dead.
Eliezer, son of Shephatiah, now serves at the temple of Jehovah in his place.
His son will serve.
Hear now this proclamation which Eliezer, the high priest, has sent out. To all the tribes of Israel, Eliezer, the high priest of Jehovah, sends greetings. The mercy of our God Jehovah and his loving kindness have been with us for the 22 years that Shephatiah served before the altar of our God. Jehovah has blessed and prospered our nation as we have rendered him true worship. May we, at this time, renew our prayers that his mercy and loving kindness abide upon us as we look to him for forgiveness of our sins and to direct us in our every endeavor. Now, let it hereby be known that in the mercy of our God, and according to his loving kindness, and the provision of his law involving blood guilt, that all who have fled to the cities of refuge are free to return to their homes, to their families, and to the land of their possession. Let no one, not even the avenger of blood, put out his hand against one of these, in order that blood guilt might not come upon the land. And let those who have received back their lives through the merciful provision of Jehovah use their lives wisely to Jehovah's praise. May they always prove to be a blessing to their brothers because of the close association they have had with Jehovah's consecrated priesthood. And may their days be many. Do gather back, O Jehovah, our company of captives, like stream beds in the Negeb. Those sowing seed with tears will reap even with a joyful cry. The one that without fail goes forth, even weeping, carrying along a bag full of seed, will without fail come in with a joyful cry, carrying along his sheaves. Praise Jah, you people. Amen and amen. And may Jehovah, the God of peace, be with you always.
Oh, it's almost like a resurrection for Caleb, isn't it?
But it means much more than that to us, Shirley. At the end of the 1,000-year reign of Christ, when the great high priest services have come to an end for those of us who are of the other sheep, we will already have attained perfection. So what does that mean? Well, being perfect, we won't need the services of the great high priest anymore. Thus, in effect, he dies to us as a priest. We'll be freed from the restraints of the city of refuge. We'll have no more blood guilt, no liability toward death. Then we'll have a standing before God on the basis of our own righteousness.
Then we've really made it, huh?
No, not quite. When Jesus turns us over to God, releasing us from the city of refuge, we must come under a final test, not for blood guilt, but as to our obedience to God, to see whether our conscience is unchangeably fixed in the right way. If we pass that test, then we'll maintain that good conscience on the basis of obedience, not anymore on the sacrifice of Jesus applied in our behalf. But that's a long way off. First, we must survive Armageddon, and we want to get a head start now to be impelled in the right direction for our activity during the 1,000 years.
And that means staying inside the city of refuge, doesn't it?
Every minute, Shirley. Now and throughout the 1,000-year reign, leaving the city of refuge means loss of life.
Ernest, you've given me more to think about than you can realize. But let me ask you this one question. Do you think I've been like Reuben?
Well, Ben, what did Reuben do? He hardened his conscience against God's provision for him, didn't he? And he persisted in it until it finally took him outside the city of refuge where he lost his life.
What do you mean he hardened his conscience, Ernest?
Well, he knew it was wrong for him to leave the city, even to consider it as a possibility. But he ignored the direction of his conscience. He felt no pain or disturbance when it should have pricked him. Then it became just like Paul said. His conscience became hardened, like flesh seared with a branding iron. His conscience, like proud flesh, felt no pain, no sense of guilt. He became complacent toward wrongdoing, and when his wrong was called to his attention, he just shrugged it off as though to say, so what? Who cares?
And he did it just to satisfy himself, didn't he?
That's right. He felt no dependence on God whatsoever. Now, Ben, you've admitted that you've been drifting a little. And you know the Apostle Paul said, that is why it is necessary for us to pay more than the usual attention to the things heard by us, that we may never drift away. Your conscience is bothering you. That's good. But listen to it, like Caleb did. He heeded Jehovah's counsel and kept a good conscience toward God. Don't harden your conscience even a little bit, like Johanan did, who almost lost out. You may still be inside the limits of the city of refuge, but if you've drifted outside the walls, so to speak, and are on the grazing grounds that belong to the city outside, how do you know how close you're getting to the extreme limits before you're really outside the antitypical city? Maybe the borders of the grazing grounds weren't too clearly marked back there, and it wouldn't have been safe to get too close to the edge of the fields, like walking on the edge of a cliff. Just a little strong wind might blow you over, and then you're gone. No, Ben, your standing before Jehovah is something you're going to have to settle between Jehovah and your own good conscience.
My own conscience?
Yes, Ben Detoured, your own conscience.
Who was that?
I'm your conscience, Ben. The good, clean conscience that you requested when you made your dedication to Jehovah. Now listen then, and listen carefully. Who can draw a sharp line between the Reubens and the Johanans and the Calebs? Can you? Who can say at what point one becomes willful in ignoring Jehovah's provision and ceases to be one who is, well, just using poor judgment? Can you? Remember what Paul said at 1 Corinthians 4:4. For I am not conscious of anything against myself. Yet by this I am not proved righteous, but he that examines me is Jehovah. And remember what Zerahiah said to Caleb. How can we say we are putting our trust in Jehovah by deliberately ignoring or violating his commandments to us? Do we dare to tempt him to save us from the avenger? If you had to face death today, right now then, where would you stand in the resurrection? Have you laid a sufficiently sound basis in faith? And are you relying sufficiently on the great high priest's services for the avenger of blood to remember you favorably? These questions you must answer yourself then, and you must answer them to Jehovah.
Then you have my answer. I say with Joshua, as for me and my household, we shall serve Jehovah.
I'm with you, Ben.
Amen, Daddy.
When